Thank you, Dan. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Susan Trier, and I'm the president of Wisconsin Lakes. And I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. It looks like we have 123 people who've registered for the annual meeting. And right now we've got about 55 of them in currently logged in. How about if we get an idea of where you're all from? And as the meeting goes on, could you go ahead and put your name of your lake and your county in chat so we can just get a feel for what our participation is? All right, so let's go ahead and advance, Ben. And just a few housekeeping items. Dan mentioned that the session will be recorded. Go ahead and use question and answer to go ahead and put your questions in. Our Vice President, Derek, will be monitoring that and then bringing them up as we go. Your mics are all going to be muted just because it's easier to keep the sound quality high. And as Dan said, the video will be posted elsewhere. And we'll send it out to you. Next. During our meeting, we're going to introduce our board members and our new director, and then we're going to take a look at what we've done and where we're going. We'll then get an update on our financial outlook as well as our membership. And then after that, we'd like to do a couple of deeper dives. A number of our membership organizations, including Lake Beulah and the Sawyer County Lakes Forum, asked for an update in November on AIS threats statewide. And our board member, John Richter, offered to share it with all of you. So that's going to be our deeper dive in ecology. And then afterwards, I will go ahead and do a deeper dive into what's happening in Madison policy-wise. Next. Here's our board. This picture was taken at a quarterly board meeting up in Kent Station. Since our last board meeting, we've added 3 new board members. Donna Carlson is in the Northwest region, and she's the second from the right, standing in a red floral shirt. Donna was with me in Crew 13. Lake Leaders, and she's the president of Grindstone Lake Association, and she's on the board of directors for the Sawyer County Lakes Forum. And Donna is the chair of our communications committee. And another new member is Dan. You've already heard from him a little bit. There he is. He's in the North Central region. He is our technology guru and our liaison to Lake Kit. He's also our representative to the Enhanced Wake Regulation Coalition. He's the president of the Wapaka Chain of Lakes Association and the secretary for their lake district as well. And then lastly, advance, we have Fred Silloway. He also hails from the Wapaka Chain of Lakes, whereas the chair of the district, he championed an ordinance restricting enhanced wake recreation. He'll be our focal point for our renewed efforts to improve our Lake District membership participation, and then also move forward with some Chapter 33 revisions in Madison. He is a recent graduate of Extension Lakes Leader Program with Crew 15. And I just wanted to kind of give a plug for the Lake Leaders Institute. It's a really excellent opportunity to strengthen your people skills, your lake science and policy knowledge, but just as critically, it connects you with other advocates across the state. And nominations for this next crew are still being accepted. And you can also nominate yourself, and don't feel bad about doing that. I know I did that for my application since I didn't know anyone at the time who had actually participated in the program. So we strongly encourage you to apply. Next. And then this just shows you how our board members map to the Wisconsin DNR regions. Ben, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Susan. Hello and welcome. My name is Ben Woyan, and I'm very honored to be the new executive director for Wisconsin Lakes. I've spent much of my career in local land conservation, working to blend shifting funding and government policies and shepherd property owners and land use towards best practices for our surface and groundwater. I love all of Wisconsin, from Marinette County to Burnett County, from ice fishing on Fox Lake to Butternut Lake, from Viroqua to Green Bay, from Lake Mendota to Lake Superior, and from the Great Mississippi to the Great Lake Michigan. I have a strong passion for wild rice and its harvest, but it isn't just about harvesting. It is about the wonderful sounds, beauty, wildlife, and people you experience throughout the state. My children have also experienced Wisconsin and the harvest their entire lives. And although they are getting much older now, we are definitely Wisconsin. I myself am Ben Woyan from Waupun. One child was born in Wausau, one in Waupaca, and one in Viroqua. And if you are familiar with Wisconsin, that last sentence probably made sense to you. We do have a farm in the Driftless area of Vernon County where we grow fruits and flowers and veggies. And now that you know a little bit about me, I want to say that I am very thankful to Wisconsin Lakes and the board for helping me to meet my life goals. And I want to give a big thanks to Mike Ingleson for his many years of great work with Wisconsin Lakes. I'm honored and appreciative that the board, in their wisdom, allowed some overlap between Mike and I to gain experience. So this is Mike in our old storage unit on his very last day. Mike helped me clean it out, and he turned to me and he said, "Is there anything in this old storage unit that was actually useful?" And I held up a book of Robert's Rules of Order and a Secchi disc. And that's when Mike turned to me and said, "Now I know you're ready to be our new executive director." It did take a few more trips to clean out that storage unit, but we did in fact get it all emptied out. And that does represent the improved efficiency that we are building upon, along with an extremely knowledgeable and dedicated board. We all have different reasons for enjoying the water in Wisconsin, but regardless of why you love your lake, we are all here tonight with a united goal. We speak for the lakes. We promote healthy lakes, provide education and technical assistance to lake organizations, advocate for sound science-based lake policy, and work with regional and statewide partners to promote and accomplish our mission. And we are expecting great things in 2026. We appreciate all of our members and lake organizations working with us to build upon the wonderful accomplishment of Wisconsin Lakes. And now I would like to invite Dan to talk about some of the accomplishments from this past year.
Hey, Ben, thanks. One of them is the Coalition to Regulate Enhanced Wakes. And this coalition is calling for bipartisan state regulations on enhanced wake regulations to help protect Wisconsin lakes resources without being overly restrictive for the right to recreate on the lakes.
Mhm.
The core team is Wisconsin Lakes, the Last Wilderness Alliance, Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, Green Fire, and Lakes at Stake Wisconsin. There are also 80 plus organizations that have signed up to support the key pillars or the 4 pillars that we're working off of. It doesn't cost anything to be a member or to be part of that organization, those 80 organizations. You can sign up simply by sending me an email at djohnson@wisconsinlakes.org, and we'll get you on the list. And with that, the benefit is that you'll get our regular emails that explain what is happening with enhanced wakes around Wisconsin and what's happening with the different pillars that we have and why we consider them as important. The 4 pillars are, first, AIS control for ballast tanks. Also, to ensure that local municipalities have local control for what is right for their lakes, and that's what local control is. 700-foot shoreline buffer and 30-foot depth. We're trying to provide ongoing newsletters, and we do that pretty much on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, explaining why the 4 pillars are important. And our next one happens to be on why 700 feet from shore is needed. With that, Ben, I'm going to hand it back to you. This coalition will continue on through 2026 and continue to fight for what we feel are the right regulations for enhanced wake regulations.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that work and for explaining it to us. We also want to continue our partnership, the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership, which has always been Wisconsin DNR, UW Extension, and Wisconsin Lakes. We're also very interested in expanding that partnership to include more local government, nonprofits, and local businesses. We want to actively engage our local land conservation. That is my background, and I have strong connections throughout the state, and tying these folks in to our local lake organizations.
Mm.
We also really appreciate the newly formed watershed councils and believe we can have a partnership with them, as these are the folks who are actually impacting land use decisions. We encourage all of us to actively engage with our local representatives, and it takes this dedicated board and this team to really make it happen. But ultimately, it depends on all of us who are members of Wisconsin Lakes to make that difference. We will continue to support our wonderful regional gatherings, which I'm sure many of you have attended. So here's a little save the date and sneak peek at some upcoming events. The Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference will be held Friday, June 12th at the Hayward High School. Registration is not quite yet open, but will be soon. The Red Cedar Watershed Conference will be Thursday, March 12th, hosted at UW Stout, and registration will be going live very shortly for that. Also, of course, our Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention will be April 15th through 17th in Stevens Point. We definitely encourage you to register soon and to get your hotels soon for this event. And we are excited to announce Luke Zahm from Wisconsin Foodie will be our keynote speaker, and he's promised to make a special Wisconsin treat for us to enjoy at that conference. Now Dan is going to talk to us about our expanded Lake Kit commitment.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'm not sure if everybody knows what Lake Kit is. If not, I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to it. It is a project from within Wisconsin Lakes, and it's an economical way to create a website for your lake organizations so that you can communicate with the community around you and help with the awareness of local and state issues. Right now, in 2025, we added 12 new lake organizations to Lake Kit. And as you can see from the chart here, we continue to grow year over year as far as the number of people that are and number of organizations that are joining Lake Kit. And the map up above shows that we're all throughout the state of Wisconsin. And so you can see that every part of the state is represented. We actually have some of the volunteers that support Lake Kit on the call today, on the webinar today. So I welcome them. I'm glad that you're on. Lake Kit provides a simple drag and drop type of editor for website management. It's very cost effective for members that are, for people that are members of Wisconsin Lakes. It's $125 a year for members and $175 for non-members. So it's extremely economical if you take a look at what other web hosting platforms are available out there. In 2025, we started holding our quarterly how-to webinars, and those are also available up on Wisconsin Lakes YouTube channel. And the main part of it that we think a lot of us get out of it is the Lake Kit community, sharing information from different organizations on what's happening in their area, what you can do to help communicate with the people that are part of your organization. And on top of that, we're always looking for volunteers to help out with the Lake Kit community. I can say I started as a volunteer for Lake Kit quite a while ago now, and the Lake Kit team and the volunteers are fantastic to work with along with everybody else that is building their own websites. That the information that is shared is fantastic. So we've had a really productive year this year with LakeKit, and I expect the same and continued in 2026. We're talking about how we can add additional feature functionality and ensure the stability that we've seen over the last number of years. So Ben, it's back to you.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'll briefly go over the financial report for 2025. For convention, our revenue was around $8,000. For individual members, around 17,000. Through lake organizations, 58,000. Our grants were around 3,500, and grants were quite difficult to come by throughout this year, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And for other revenue, just shy of $11,000. So our total revenue was $98,000. Our total expenses was around $111,000. So that is a net deficit, which we're largely attributing to the transition time in our organization and the lack of availability of grant funding. Though we do have many plans on how to improve upon that, and we do also expect, anticipate, and hope for more end of the year donations and giving. For individual members, we have approximately 300 folks. That cost is $30, though we are seeing quite a few folks starting to give monthly or a few times throughout the year because they see the great value in Wisconsin Lakes. We have approximately 250 member organizations, and that represents at least 15,000 individuals made up of those different lake organizations. And Susan?
Yeah, so looking ahead, we're going to continue our advocacy work, obviously. We're registered as a lobbying principal so that we can advocate with legislatures, their staff, and also the DNR. As mentioned earlier, we'd like to continue our work on Chapter 33 and advance some much needed revisions. Chapter 33 is a statewide statute which outlines the operating rules for lake districts. And to ease that passage in Madison, we'll need to secure widespread support among all the lake groups, lake districts. And so to that end, we're going to be setting up a Lake District Advisory Committee. So let us know if you'd like to be included in this effort. And we'll also continue our work with Wisconsin Extension Lakes and Boardman Clark to develop a framework to support lake districts through their initial efforts, all to organize all the way through their ongoing challenges. Another area that I'd like to mention, member organization was going through the ordinance process for enhanced wake regulation, and they asked us to help them understand their own lobbying capabilities. So we'd like to bring that information to all our members and empower you to advocate to your local municipalities confidently without worrying that it violates your nonprofit standing. And then we're going to continue to network with other environmental partners, which connects us to a wide range of statewide issues: drinking water, wetlands, land trusts, hunting and fishing spills, data centers, just to name a few. It goes without saying, of course, that our commitment to the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership, which Ben mentioned earlier, remains unwavering, and we only see LakeKit growing in 2026, which Dan outlined. So that brings us to regional networks. And as we can see by the effectiveness of WAMSCO, lake associations have joined together in countywide or regional groups to leverage their resources. And there are groups all across Wisconsin: Bayfield, Forest, Oneida, Vilas, Iron, Sawyer, Washburn, Polk, and Lake County or Lake Country down in Southeast, just to name a few. We are organized regionally as well, and we'd like to empower our board to become more active in their regions. So a couple of ideas that we'd like to implement next year are regional meetings with our lake districts to discuss the Chapter 33 revisions. And we're going to host a regional meeting in the Southeast and South Central, focusing on bringing lake leaders together to share case studies, tools, and ideas on Southern concerns. Lastly, another major effort we're going to spearhead in 2026 will be a series of webinars. So Derek, can you share our strategy on this new program?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Just a reminder too, if anyone has any questions on any of the topics, feel free to put those into either the chat or the Q&A as we go along, and we'll try to address those as we can here. So I'm Derek Kavanaugh, Vice President of Wisconsin Lakes, and every year we do a little bit of internal reflection to see what else we can do for our members. And what we came up with this year, which I think is going to be a great addition, is a new statewide webinar series called Lakes in Focus. And you can see the new logo on the screen right there. So across Wisconsin, many lake organizations are dealing with the same challenges, whether it's lake management and water quality, governance and funding, navigating state and local regulations, or responding to emerging issues. A lot of our members have the same questions. They just live in different parts of the state. And we spend a lot of time responding to these questions as volunteers. So we thought, let's put this together in a more organized fashion that we can not only interact with the members at these webinars, but we can also put them on our YouTube channel for a reference library in the future. Yeah. So we'll be launching the Lakes in Focus as a member benefit. The goal is to provide consistent, practical information that lake leaders can use in their day-to-day lives. Each session will bring together lake experts, agency staff, and experienced practitioners to address the most common and most important questions we hear from across the state. Presentations will be led by experts with time dedicated for questions and answers from the audience. We'll be providing everything online, and it'll be available, like I said, in the library, that if you can attend or you just need to look up a topic, we're going to have those building over time. We're going to have a couple of different styles. The main style is going to be one-on-one conversations with most likely board members and the experts with questions from the audience. And we'll also have some in-person town hall style discussions that will be recorded. We expect to launch this in late winter, early spring. So whether you're a longtime lake leader or newly involved with your group, Lakes in Focus is designed to help you make informed decisions, better understand rules and processes, learn from challenges that other Wisconsin lakes are facing, and build confidence in managing and protecting your lakes. So our goal is basically to create a shared learning space, helping communities work together more effectively for everyone. And I hope you'll join us in this new series as we look forward to learning together. In order to make this as accessible as possible, we've chosen to rely entirely on donations to fund the development of the webinars instead of charging a registration fee to participate in each one. So as a nonprofit, we do rely on donations, so every contribution matters. So I hope you guys are willing to continue to support our expanded roles that we're trying to fill for everyone here. And in just a moment, we're going to have a poll pop up on your screen featuring some topics that were frequently asked. We invite you to vote on these issues that matter most to you and your lake. This list is not all inclusive. It's just kind of a starter point where which are the most important pressing questions that you'd like to see first off in our webinar series. So if everyone can take a moment now and put in your vote. Dan, if you can kind of see that, you can close that when you feel most people are done voting.
Yeah, still coming in quite quickly here, so I'm going to wait for just a couple minutes or a couple seconds here until things settle down. I got a few more coming in, and get your vote in now, and I will vote in just a couple of seconds. All right, I think things have slowed down enough. I will end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Derek, I will now share the results.
Right, and if you didn't get a chance to get your vote in, or you have other topics, we're always, looking for for ideas, but this was helpful in planning our first guests who we're going to be interacting with for these webinars. So hopefully you guys will be served well by this and will join as we continue to develop these.
All right, as you can see, the top one is AIS prevention effective versus feels good. And I'll stop sharing here and let you move on.
All right, now I'd like to introduce John Richter, member of our board of directors, who will be taking a deeper dive into one of the most pressing challenges facing lakes across the landscape today, the persistent and ever-expanding threat of aquatic invasive species.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it. In this segment, we're going to take a quick look at the current status of aquatic invasive species, some new species that are on the horizon for us and that threaten our inland lakes in Wisconsin, and tools and measures to counter this invasion. Oh, wait a minute. I've got to share this, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I need to request this, Ben.
That should be yours now, John. I just allowed you to do it.
Okay, good.
There you go.
All right, and I will
Presentation mode.
that and play from start.
There you go. Very good.
All righty. So it is not sharing.
Yeah, John, you're sharing and you're on your very first slide, your intro slide.
Yeah, and I'm hitting the forward and it's not moving like it did yesterday. Try that. Okay,
There
here we
you
go. Well, speaking of new aquatic invasive species, Dr. Jake van der Zanden, who leads UW Center for Limnology, said, "My concern is that invasive species are able to fester at undetectable levels and then explode when conditions are right." If you know the story of spiny water flea in Lake Mendota, that's exactly what happened there. Spiny had apparently been in Mendota for years, and when weather and water conditions turned just right, the population exploded. Jake was in a boat in September of 2009 with students dip netting the lake for plankton. What they found was water teeming with spiny water fleas. In this 500 million cubic feet of water, Mendota was estimated to be the home to 500 billion spiny water flea. The next spring, they found spiny in concentrations of 1,000 per cubic meter of water, the thickest concentrations found anywhere in the world. That spring, the next spring, they found that they had lost 90% of their Daphnia and 3 feet of water clarity as a result. Daphnia zooplankton is a key consumer of phytoplankton, algae, and it's also the primary key forage species for young of the year fish. There really is no replacement for food source at the level needed to maintain harvestable fish populations for our zooplankton. Spiny was brought to Mendota from Lake Michigan in a boat. At last count, there were 186 invasive species in Lake Michigan brought in by ballast water up the St. Lawrence. Here's a quick outline of spiny water flea and its impact on our lakes. They compete with juvenile fish since Daphnia are their primary food source. The spiny reduces algae-eating Daphnia, phytoplankton increases, and water clarity decreases. The long tail spines make it hard for small fish to eat spiny water flea. They're a dead end in the food web, and they lead to poor spawning results and lower game fish populations. There is no way to eliminate spiny water flea once they're in your lake, and spiny water flea today is spread to more than 25 lakes in Wisconsin. The loss of algae-eating zooplankton like Daphnia results in severe algae blooms, which also can concentrate cyanobacteria known as blue-green algae. Cyanobacteria is a human health hazard, and it's fatal for pets. This photo is from Fox Lake in Dodge County. I worked in Fox Lake watershed for many years, and the chair of the Lake District recently told me he had fenced in his yard, including his lake frontage, to keep his dog from drinking the water in the summer. There are many incidences of pets being poisoned by cyano-contaminated lake water. Here's a real monster, a new threat for inland lakes, and this is kind of a game changer. Unlike zebra mussels, which require a hard surface to attach to, quagga mussels can exist on soft bottom surfaces. When quagga was discovered, quagga enables it to filter more than a liter of water a day. It consumes both phytoplankton and Lake Michigan's predominant zooplankton, Diarrhea, and its cousins, our native Daphnia and other zooplankton that are the main food source for young of the year fish in Lake Michigan. Numbering in the billions and at densities of up to 35,000 mussels per square meter, quagga mussels filter the entire volume of Lake Michigan every 10 days. More information on quagga and zebra is found at Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab. Quagga is spread by boats. It came here in ballast and it's spread in ballast. Here's an expansion of that map from Great Lakes on quagga in Lake Michigan, the year 2000 at the left and 2010 at right. Quagga has nearly totally replaced zebra mussels in Michigan in just 10 years. This is a map showing the density of native zooplankton in Lake Michigan, 94 on the left and 2010 on the right. The mussels have nearly erased zooplankton and phytoplankton from Lake Michigan. And again, this is serious. It's the primary food source in Lake Michigan for all of the native fish. Here is quagga at left and zebra at right. Zebra's been expanding across the state in waters that have the necessary chemical composition, which is primarily enough calcium to support their shell formation. It's now considered that about 12 micrograms per liter of calcium is sufficient, but lakes close to that are considered potentially susceptible. And recent studies on Lake Powell are casting some doubt on whether or not that threshold is really accurate for quagga. Quagga can exist and reproduce in water with calcium content of less than 10 micrograms per liter, but the bottom threshold in their studies is not yet known. Adverse impacts include displacement of beneficial aquatic plants, reduction in invertebrate densities and fish spawning, and reduction in species biodiversity. And it gets worse. Quagga feces contain phosphorus and more nitrogen than any other animal. The result in Lake Michigan has been an explosion of Cladophora, a filamentous algae, due to water clarity that's gone from Secchi readings of 20 feet to now more than 100 feet in Michigan. There are 183 species of Cladophora, and some exist in many of our inland lakes. Another result is the production of pathogenic microbes such as E. coli and fecal bacteria, a potential human health hazard. And we shouldn't forget the negative impacts on recreational use of impacted shoreline, nearshore areas from both terrible smell of rotting algae and the sharp edges of dead mussels on the beach, and depressed property values of adjacent homes. The sequence goes like this. Cladophora blooms to the new depths in clear water, and now there's a lot of it. It eventually dies. It burns up oxygen as it decomposes. Anoxia results, and bacteria that produce botulism thrive. Quagga sucks up those bacteria. Gobies, and also an import from the Black Sea, eat the poison mussels. Poison gobies become paralyzed and they're easy prey for ducks and loons and eagles and grebes and gulls and herons, and the birds die by the tens of thousands along the Lake Michigan migration corridor. Turning to the plant life that's new, starry stonewort was first discovered in Little Muskego Lake in 2014, and now it's in 65 lakes and rivers in Wisconsin. This is a chara, a microalga. It has no food value, and it dominates the bottom to the exclusion of aquatic plants. Local dispersal by bulbils, the star-shaped little guy in the lower right, or plant fragments being transported by water currents or boats within the lake is the way it spreads. Since only male starry stonewort exists in the United States, no viable seeds are produced. Starry grows not only in shallow water, but deeper than many aquatic plants to more than 30 feet. And this is European frogbit, a floating lily pad-like invasive with a leaf that's less than 2 inches and a very small white flower. The dense growth form of this species can get caught in boat motors, affect fish and waterfowl movement, decrease oxygen levels in water as it decomposes. European frogbit is extremely difficult and costly to control, and its ability to form new plants vegetatively has allowed it to spread and proliferate quickly. It came ashore in Oconto County, and it spread to Marinette and Brown and Dorr, And DNR is now working very hard to try to contain this thing. They are very concerned about this plant. It's now in 50 locations in Wisconsin, in the Northeast. And the dense mats that it forms are a real hazard for navigation. You can't motor through this stuff. Now this is round goby, brought in by ballast and ocean freighters along with quagga. It's expanding in rivers in states adjacent to the Great Lakes. Goby is a small but aggressive bottom-dwelling fish that grows rapidly and reproduces several times in one spawning season. It's a threat to aquatic ecosystems as it causes declines in native fish species and poses a threat to health as it can harbor contaminants such as heavy metals and PCBs and bacteria and toxins in its fatty tissue. Gobies routinely thrive at the expense of native fish populations by outcompeting them for food and breeding habitat. It feeds on aquatic macroinvertebrates, small native freshwater mussels, and the eggs and young of native fish species. The round goby poses a particular threat to smallmouth bass, as it often feeds on their eggs and fry. The round goby has competitive advantage over native fish because it can feed in complete darkness, and it aggressively defends prime spawning areas. Now, this is the web-based AIS prevention tool of UW Limnology. The red streams here are considered to be suitable for round gobies. Gobies were also recently discovered in Lake Winnebago. Jake Vanderzanden says more lakes will be next. This is New Zealand. This is New Zealand mud snail brought into Wisconsin trout streams, likely by trout fishermen on the felt soles of their waders after trips to western streams. The New Zealand mud snail has no natural predators or parasites. In the United States, consequently, it's become an invasive species. Densities have reached greater than 300,000 individuals per square meter in the Madison River in Montana. It can reach concentrations of greater than 500,000, and that endangers the food chain by outcompeting native snails and water insects for food. It leads to sharp declines in native populations, and fish populations then suffer because native snails and insects are their main food source. This is red swamp crayfish. This invasive is of great concern since it's a very aggressive predator on young of the year fish, and it carries a fungus plague to native crayfish. It also burrows, and that impacts shorelines and dikes. While not a plant, VHS, viral hemorrhagic septicemia, is of great concern in Wisconsin. This fish virus can be transferred in infected water. VHS has been described by the College of Veterinary Science at Cornell as one of the most devastating fish diseases on a worldwide basis. It was discovered in Winnebago in 2006. DNR immediately enacted emergency rules in the transfer of water between lakes. Those became NR 40 and NR 19.055. These regs prohibit the transfer of water from lakes and transporting invasive species. All boaters are required to empty their live wells and drain bilges when leaving a lake, all except wake boats. The vector for the spread of many of these species and the other 186 species lingering in Lake Michigan and waiting for transport is the transfer of infested water or fragments from plants on trailers and props. So what can we do? Decontamination capability is a goal, but it's a long way off. Utah company Clean Wakes has designed a new system for western reservoirs in the hopes of keeping quagga out. It's called a dip tank, and here it is. It's really, with this system, the entire boat and trailer are backed into a tank, which is like a cement bathtub, and the pumps are activated in the boat. That circulates 110-degree water in the ballast tanks for 10 minutes, completely covering the inside of the ballast tank. And that's sufficient to kill the veligers and the adult mussels. There are now more than 5 of these in the West, and new facilities are under construction. These permanent installations cost $800,000 each. But this is the gold standard for decontamination of ballast. We've spoken to Garrett Atwood, owner and inventor, and discussed the possibility of a location for this in Wisconsin, and it has some logistical challenges, but Garrett told me that he'd be happy to be involved in this and even come out and do a seminar on it. The vector is boats, not the feet of ducks, and the last point of intercept is boat landings. Many townships and individual lakes have added ILEDS units like these to their boat landings. These units capture video of each boat launch, upload it to a server by a modem, and broadcast audio messages reminding boaters of their responsibility to drain their boats and motors and remove any plant fragments to prevent the spread of AIS.
Time. Vector boat and trailer before launching and after pulling out, and remove any aquatic plants or animals. Thank you for helping us stop the spread of aquatic invasive species.
This is the ILEDS unit on Irving Lake in the town of Plum Lake. The solar panel is up there, and on top of the solar panel is the antenna. The sign is specific to this lake. The staff sits on top of the ILEDS unit, and there you have the camera and the speaker with the little holes in it. On top of it, there are 4 specific messages in this. In the town of Plum Lake, where we have spiny water flea on Plum, there is a message about spiny water flea. Those broadcast with a gap in between them while people are launching and picking up. So that is the essence of an ILEDS unit. ILEDS, if you would like to know, is an acronym for Internet Landing Installed Device Sensor. In my township of Plum Lake in central Vilas County, we've installed 7 of these on our major lake landings, and in addition to surveillance coverage of 100% of daylight hours, we obtain a great deal of data on the use of these landings and the peak times for boat launching, types of boats and common practices and common mistakes of boaters. We really feel that this is the most comprehensive solution we have today for landing protection. Videos of violations are forwarded to our DNR wardens directly and subsequently to our team members for their information. Until decontamination is available in Wisconsin and a system for compliance is guaranteed, the only option available is to outlaw the use of ballast in our inland lakes to prevent contamination and to comply with existing Wisconsin law on the transfer of water. Now, this unit is called a hydroblaster. It's also used in Western states. Decontaminating internal ballast is much more time-consuming with this unit since its intake and draining ports differ from manufacturer to manufacturer, and 120-degree minimum water temperature is required in order to effectively kill the invasives in the tanks. The process takes more than an hour for each boat, and operator knowledge of each brand's internal pump systems is required. That shows the bottom of the boat where they are in the process of injecting some water. In the Great Lakes, 95% of shipping tonnage is between Great Lakes states. Less than 5% is from overseas freighters. And that decreases every year to what could be hauled out by one outbound train with grain and one inbound train with foreign steel. It was estimated that the cost to offload to rail and keep the salties out of the Great Lakes would have been $55 million annually. The cost of the ecological unraveling of the Great Lakes was estimated in 2008 to be $1.5 billion, and it's more today. Ballast impacts are not a lesson we should have to relearn in Wisconsin, yet the DNR and Natural Resources Board are really offering no response to our pleas to regulate new ballast threats coming from ballasted boats. This is a photo of my home, the Northern Highlands District, ecological district in northern Wisconsin. The Northern Highland economy is built on the glacial lakes and the pristine water in this photo. A quagga migration into these lakes would be devastating and unrecoverable for this significant portion of our state, where the economy is already severely impacted by winter season global warming. So with an ever-decreasing budget driven by the Wisconsin legislature, the DNR can't be expected to handle many of the issues that they have in the past. It's one of the principal reasons for creating the Lakes Partnership, which includes the University of Wisconsin and the Department of Natural Resources and Wisconsin Lakes, where we assist with the formation and education, operational capacity, and management of lake associations and districts. This is the workforce for our lakes. It makes all of us on this Zoom the last line of defense for our lakes. Their health and beauty and role in our economy are in our hands. My thanks to all of you for being part of the protection and preservation of our lake resources, and my thanks for your attention. Dan?
Hey, John, we
Yes.
had a one question that's and it's maybe something to think about on how to do it, but it says that your photos of AIS are really effective, and I agree. To help move public thinking about Eurasian milfoil prevention efforts from a feel-good to effective, would it make sense to somehow use underwater photography to compare what a healthy lake bottom to one infested with whatever would be useful in capturing people's attention?
It's an excellent idea, and I've seen underwater photography that's been done by UW Milwaukee in the Great Lakes. They have some terrific videos of, for instance, floating Cladophora that's died and floating in just thousands of round gobies. That would be a good idea. And we could put together some video footage of that to present in a webinar, perhaps. So I'll look into that. Harvey Bootsma, the director of freshwater science at UWM, is probably the right guy for me to contact. And I know Jake, and I can talk to Jake about it too and see if we can't find a way to get some students to do that and help us with that presentation. So good thought, and I'll take it on from there.
Then another question came in saying, can we be able to get a copy of John's presentation, or would John be willing to give it in another region?
This presentation is going to be available, and we'll have it posted to our website, Wisconsin Lakes. And I'm happy to present it to meetings. I've been doing that around the state through my work with Last Wilderness Alliance as well. So if you would like one for your lake association or your township, give me a call.
Yep. Yeah, and if it isn't John, maybe it would be the board member who is in your region.
Sure.
Yeah.
Easily done.
John, this is Chris Sampson, fellow board member. I've heard you talk about this before, but for decades, when people talked AIS, they were basically talking about Eurasian milfoil, maybe zebra mussels in some lakes. But the new ones you present today, it's a whole new ballgame, is it not?
Yes, it is. And it keeps coming over the transom. This is something that's going to keep happening. We're going to learn every year or two. There are going to be a few new species that we're going to have to fight, and it takes more than a village to combat the invasive species that are coming out of Lake Michigan. We need to find a way to interdict the transfer of those species, primarily by boats. It's really important to get on this.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. So we're coming into the home stretch. Let's talk just a little bit more about policy. It seems like members enjoy that. So, of course, we're going to continue our efforts on effective enhanced wake regulation, whether that's speaking up against an industry-backed bill or advocating for meaningful science-backed regulation. What we're hearing is that an industry-backed bill will be dropped in the assembly this winter. Many legislators seem to be waiting for midterm elections and the results of the Town of Scott case before they're making any comment on how they're feeling. We will continue to advocate for the inclusion of ballast systems within our existing invasive species statutes and administrative rules that John had mentioned in his presentation. And many of you, I hope, did receive the email that we sent out explaining where we're going with the administrative rule. We also support the bipartisan effort, that's the next line item, to establish private well owners' right to know if their drinking water is contaminated. 1 in 3 Wisconsin families rely on private wells, and this bill would require the DNR to notify county health departments, county land and water conservation departments, and tribal health departments if they identified a nearby contamination, whether that be nitrates or PFAS or even arsenic. It's important to realize that this bill develops a framework which can be built on later with more extensive notification requirements and funding, which this current bill does not have. A public hearing is scheduled at 10 a.m. on 12/18 in the Natural Resources Committee, and I'll put a link in the chat, which if you wanted to see whether or not your legislator is supporting that, then you can look it up. The DNR also just released a brand new online tool to help well owners interpret their drinking water lab results. And I'll put that tool in the chat as well. It's called Be Well Informed. So that might be helpful if you have a private well. The other subject I wanted to talk a little bit about is the continued battle over DNR authority. And classically, the legislative branch sets policy and the executive branch implements the details of that policy through regulation or administrative rule. In Wisconsin's 2017-2018 session, the legislators sought to hamstring the rulemaking authority of state administrative agencies, and they changed the rulemaking process. They set dollar limits, they expedited repeal, they set time limits for the approval process. And so the executive branch sued in 2023, and that's where you see that Evers versus Marklein. And in the following year, the Supreme Court ruled that legislative committees cannot veto administrative rules made by state agencies just by blocking them. With this decision, analysts really thought that there would be a shift towards a more executive-driven regulatory environment and an empowered DNR. And some of you might have read that in state press. The legislature has responded in this session with those Assembly Bills 274, 275, 276, 277. And I wasn't going to get into them in great detail, but I want you to understand that these bills are all ways to try to prevent the DNR or the administrative state in having flexible administrative rules. It's important to know the tension has not settled down, and that even though the DNR has won court cases, they feel that they're still being punished with decreased funding and, fairly hostile rhetoric coming from some legislators. And the next set of bills I wanted to bring up is being introduced by Senator Stafford and Representative Green out of Northwest Wisconsin. And the environmental lobbyists were not brought into this process at all. Neither was the hunting groups as well. And they don't believe that this is a serious attempt to bring additional funding into the DNR. LRB 5169 would allow registration fees for non-motorized boats. This idea has been brought up since 2016, and a number of our surrounding states already do this, right, including Minnesota and Illinois. Currently, Wisconsin has a voluntary program, which just brings in hardly anything, minimal revenue. The other LRBs that you see there would set annual fees for hiking, including for children, biking, cross-country skiing, and they're even encouraging a charge for people who forage. So $40 a year if you want to pick some mushrooms in a state property. Next. And what I'll do now, while the questions are being raised, I'll go ahead and type in those links for you that I said that I would.
All right. I'll go through a couple of questions we have here. If you guys have additional questions, feel free to add them to either the Q&A tab or the chat, whichever one's easier for you to figure out. I'll just kind of start from the top here. And one of the always interesting questions that we get is the difference between some of the different partners in our Lakes partnership. If you remember, we have Wisconsin DNR, Extension Lakes, and Wisconsin UW Extension Lakes, and Wisconsin Lakes. If I said that correctly. So there's always a lot of overlap, especially if you come only to the convention and interact with our organization. There's so many roles that we collaborate on that it can be confusing. So does anyone want to on the board want to take a stab at the difference between Extension Lakes and Wisconsin Lakes?
Sure,
So-
I will, Derek. I can do that. The three-legged stool, DNR is the state of Wisconsin. Extension Lakes or UW Extension Lakes, that's bringing academic and research expertise to the same set of problems. And Wisconsin Lakes is really the citizen voice. We used to be kind of think of ourselves as an associate, the statewide association of all the different volunteer lake associations, all the legally constituted lake districts, and we still are. We're a little different, but it's basically a three-legged stool where we're the citizen input. Extension Lakes is primarily, although they get citizen input as does the DNR, but they're probably the academic research component. And then the DNR is our link to state government and also the professional staff of the Department of Natural Resources. It's about as simple as that.
When this started in the early 90s, it was started by Lowell Klessig, who was a DNR at that time. And what I've read about Lowell's opinions on this is that he was realizing that there was no way DNR would ever be able to provide the manpower to do the work that they would need to do on our lakes. So they created the Wisconsin Association of Lakes, and that was the beginning of the formation of the worker bees that are going to provide the on-lake help for DNR to do this. It was early 90s when this all started, when the three-legged stool was created.
Yeah, so one of the main advantages of Wisconsin Lakes is that, we can take on some of the political positioning and the lobbying and some of those activities also that the state organizations are not allowed to. So we do work very closely. I mean, they're part of the three-legged stool, so a lot of our work does overlap. We've even done webinars in the past that Mike, our former executive director, did with Extension Lakes, and they held a webinar together. So there's a lot of stuff that we share back and forth, and it's a great partnership. So, all right.
Quick insert. Dan, I tried to put in the chat, a number of people asked for those links. And for whatever reason, I can only put it in the panelists. I can't send it to everyone. So I thought maybe you could just cut and paste, and you have the ability to send it to everyone. If not, what I will do is I can include that in the email to everyone who participated and make sure you get those links. But I'm technologically impaired. I can only do it to a panelist.
Yeah, let me see what I can do.
And then meanwhile, there was another question raised. And it was really interesting. It's talking about end of October, the Wisconsin Towns Association had a town law conference. And they suggested that we go ahead and get a copy of this seminar or listen to the seminar so that we could have a better understanding of the guidelines he gave town officials, which is an excellent idea. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, and we will try to find it.
Derek, if I could jump back in and clarify, I did see a note in the comments or in the chat that Extension Lakes is really not a research engine. Their education and their outreach. But I'll also amend my earlier statement by saying one of the most important things that's happening is both Extension and Wisconsin Lakes are empowering and educating and encouraging citizens, different lake associations, to do their own lake monitoring. And that's been one of the success stories of the last few years, the last few decades, is that the DNR can't get around to every lake and monitor water quality and oxygen levels and water temperature and things like that, phosphorus levels. There really is an army of potential volunteers out there on every lake. And some of the older and more successful lake associations really do a great job of monitoring water quality. Research, I also mean water monitoring, is that Wisconsin Lakes does some educational things. The Lake Leaders Program and UW Extension, citizen scientists. That's kind of the new trend, and it's a good one. The more people who are out there who understand the science and can watch the lakes and keep them healthy, that's a good thing.
There was
All right,
a, go ahead.
Susan. I was going to just address the question here, and hopefully someone on the board can address this. So we all are volunteer board members and have our personal strengths. This one here has to do with lobbying. So what involvement in political and lobbying process can a person have if they officially reside outside the state of Wisconsin but own a second home in the States, since they can't vote for town or local officials? Now, Mike, our former director, was a registered lobbyist.
That's a good question. And part of the question I have for, what was his name, Voigt, is whether or not he's a member of a lake district. If he's a member of a lake district, he has the ability to work through his lake district as a taxpayer to work within a municipality. He can't vote necessarily for representatives if, let's say, he's from Minnesota or Illinois, but he could certainly work with his local association, his lake association, as well as the Lake District would actually have considerable influence as well. So there are ways that you can make your opinion known, but it is more challenging being an out-of-stater.
And if there are questions about some of the voting rights, you can always reach out to the organization too, because lake districts have a very unique set of rules of who can vote. It's very, very different. I don't want to get into that right now because it can be quite complex, but it's part of the Chapter 33 information. So we'll try to address those more individually if we can.
Another question was dealing, John, with your eyelids. Could you maybe also talk about the surface water grant possibility with that?
There are grants for eyelids. We got grants for all of ours in the town of Plum Lake. And in the course of that, actually went through a re-examination of the whole eyelids program. So grants were kind of off the table for 2 years while we went through DNR legal. We got all of that done, got the next eyelids units approved for the town of Plum Lake, and the grant program opened up statewide again. So grants are available. I think they're 75% grants, and all of that information is available through us, through Environmental Century, who is the manufacturer of these units, and there are cost figures that are available for that can be provided by Environmental Century, so you know what you're into. The units themselves cost. There's a new prototype for that unit out too that's much smaller than the steel tanks that we have on our landings. It's actually kind of a glorified iPhone, and it's a significant improvement. That's in beta testing right now. But the numbers are right around, the cost numbers are right around $8,000 to $9,000. And for the existing unit, it'll be a couple $1,000s more for the new prototype. And 75% again can come from the grant.
Let me add to that there's an operational cost every year. It's up to about $2,000 now, which
Yeah.
is not covered by the grant. But the grant does a good job of covering your initial assets involved in the installation and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's good. I just want to pipe in. I see Sarah Winju, one of our great partners at Wisconsin or at Extension Lakes, kind of clarified from their point of view what they do. Extension. This is Sarah's writing, educational. Thank you, Sarah. We worked hand in hand with Sarah for the last 5 years or so that she's been on board, and she's been a great partner to us.
All right, I'll bring a question up here, and I don't know if anyone has experience on the board or not, but has there been any collaboration with the UWM Freshwater Sciences School? Anyone from the Southeast region? I'm not aware of any direct collaboration at this time.
We don't have, but we would like to have, and that's something that I think needs to go on our short list for the future. They're doing some amazing work, and it would be great to be closer to them. We do have, through Trout Lake Station, a nice relationship with UW Limnology in Madison, but the School of Freshwater Science at UWM that's an amazing group, and a lot of the information that we have on gobies and Cladophora and the problems of zebra and quagga mussels is coming from UWM. So it would be a good thing to reach out and see what we can do to establish a relationship with them.
Yeah, because in that group, my local lake over here in Jefferson County, we've reached out and working with them in trying to understand E. coli on beaches. So that was some of their work. One of their professors had determined that E. coli actually can survive on sand in the beach, and actually increase in quantity as well. So we've been trying to work on understanding genetics of vectors of E. coli on our beaches. So I agree, we should really be reaching out more to them.
I just want to do a quick follow-up on Jerry's question. So he said he's the Apartment Association, which makes it a little trickier. One thing that I've found, because I have worked with associations through my job for the last 25 years, is sometimes just inviting those elected officials to your meeting and taking them out on a pontoon and showing them firsthand, and I know that not all associations are on the same level and see eye to eye about the topics, but that's been very effective, and we've had very good luck. It's surprising how many elected officials are willing to go on a pontoon boat. It's a nice meeting instead of sitting in a stuffy library basement. So,
yep.
Ben, are you still there?
Let's see here. So I've been multitasking here. So if you guys answered a couple of these questions in the Q&A, if you want to dismiss those, just so I know where we're at.
I think, Dan, are we ready to advance for now? Or do you want to work through more questions?
Derek?
You can advance the last slide. We'll keep taking some questions here as we go.
Yeah. And so basically, it's not any news to those of us on this call tonight, but the situation facing our lakes and our local lake associations, organizations is changing and under strain. Our lakes are facing some nasty invaders like the spiny water flea that you see on the screen now and the quagga mussel that John mentioned earlier, which then changes the underlying ecology, favoring those algae blooms. Next, layer that with undeniable changes to our weather, where there's much more volatility, which is what that first chart is showing of, drought and lots of rain flip-flopping over the months. There's also changing ice patterns, and that's what that second graph is showing, which creates mismatches in food availability for our aquatic fish. And the impacts are not being felt equally across lakes. You could understand that seepage lakes are facing something much different than drainage lakes. Next. Another compounding layer is that those who we turn to for help have been losing funding, and more loss is predicted for state agencies, extension, and then that will ripple down into county resources as well. And then the magic sauce, next, is how much we love being on our lakes with our pier structure and our numerous boats. And that last picture of boats is just a nightmare. I just thought it might make you chuckle. As a statewide organization with long-standing links to the extension and to the DNR, Wisconsin Lakes can help our members navigate these challenges together, and sharing best practices across our members, helping members grow their capacities and locally and regionally, coordinating with agencies, advocating with policy leaders. This isn't a place that's easy to navigate alone, and we're much better together. Next.
So with you, we can make a difference. We really can. You may ask, well, what can you do? Well, why don't you go ahead and click? Make sure your organization is a member of Wisconsin Lakes. That's easy to do. You can use the QR code here and go to Wisconsin Lakes directly. You can take and subscribe or become a member just by going to the website or the address that's listed at the bottom. Next. You can become an individual member, contributing member. The same thing. You can go to the QR code, go to the website and go to the member section of the website, or you can mail it directly to Wisconsin Lakes on the address shown. Next. Contact your state representatives and let them know what you're concerned about and what you would like to see happen and what can be done. Next, volunteer. We have a host of things that you could volunteer for. One, you could become a host of the regional in-person events that Derek talked about for Lakes in Focus. You can join the Lake Kit team. This is what I did, and become active with other lake organizations around the state. You or your organization could join the Coalition for Enhanced Wake Regulation and become aware of what's going on with that around the state. And you can volunteer to be on the Lake District Advisory Board here on Wisconsin Lakes. So there's plenty of things that you can do to help and make a difference. And finally, go ahead, share what you learned. Make this available for all your friends around the lake and people that you know are concerned about the lakes also. We ask that you do that because we all can make a difference. Ben, it's back to you and Susan.
All right, Ben.
I believe that was our last
That's
one.
the last slide.
Yeah.
So we have a few more questions here. We'll try to cover the ones we can that are probably the most, I guess, answerable here. Some of them are longer discussions. Did you guys already address the question about the Towns Association or the comment?
Yeah, we're gonna look into that. I
Okay.
appreciate that he gave that to us because we've not seen it. So we'll look for that.
We certainly weren't invited to that. No.
The partnership that we're developing with Last Wilderness Alliance, they have been invited to speak to 2 or 3 towns associations
Yeah.
at this point. And kind of through that avenue, we are indirectly and directly, since some of us are related to both organizations, getting closer to that. That's been a real difficult road to hoe.
Yeah, and for those of you that, sorry for that, can't see the comment on there, I'll just kind of summarize it, that there was a Wisconsin Towns Association meeting, and they had a presentation on draftings. And just wondering if
Oh,
scheduled too.
okay.
So he's Last Wilderness Alliance, and we're working together on a lot of the future presentation work now.
and there's a couple of questions. Just I'll touch just briefly on this because it does continue on the wake boat thing, and we could do another 2 hours on the wake boats. But there's a couple of questions here about, can the state restrict use of wake boats on smaller lakes, and also how can individual lake associations mitigate environmental damage from wake watercraft without state legislation? I'll make a couple comments from my local area here. We have a couple of different scenarios, and we've worked with many of our partners on these, including Last Wilderness Alliance. But one lake decided to go with an advisory. They basically put up signs, and they have a digital map you can scan and download onto your chart master or GPS to know which areas of the lake you should stay in with your boat. Other lakes have decided through their townships to pass restrictions, restricting the use of the boat in wake mode. That's a couple of those. I don't know if John, if you want to make a couple of comments as follow up on that.
Sure. We have right now, I think as of yesterday, we have 75 townships that have passed ordinances restricting wake surfing activity on those lakes or within those towns. Many of those towns are we've got a map that really spread all over the state of Wisconsin, but we started in Vilas County and Oneida County, and we're covering that pretty thoroughly, working in Iron County now, Sawyer County. I've been out to talk to a group that Donna's associated with, and I think there will be more coming from that area. So with the ordinance work that we're doing is effective. The enforcement has not been an issue. That's a question that always comes up, but it really has not been an issue for me in the town of Plum Lake and for our township. It works. People abide, they obey the law typically, and we have not had a problem with it. There is an enforcement mechanism that's available for townships to do, and it's not difficult. It's about as difficult as a traffic ticket, and that really is the method that we use a citation. So it works.
And I'd also
Yeah,
say on
so-
those questions, if there is something that needs to be addressed, reach out to us,
Yeah.
and we'll help where we can, because a lot of us have been through this and understand the difficulties that go with it. So don't hesitate to send us an email and reach out to us.
Yeah, if we did not fully answer your question, or if we didn't get to it today, yeah, please reach out either directly to Wisconsin Lakes email address or individual directors. We do just be a little bit patient. We do have a system. Ben is our only full-time staff, so he needs to sort through those emails and then get them out to the director that can best answer those, so it does not happen immediately, because we're trying to get everything settled in. We just did the transition, so just have a little bit of patience, but we will get back to you. So
Yeah, thoughtfully. Okay. Any final words, Ben?
I really appreciate everyone attending this evening, and we have a phenomenal board, you guys. The way they have stepped up, you saw some of their skills this evening, but their skills behind the scenes have been absolutely incredible. I'm very honored to be here and to be part of it. Very happy to be supporting this board and the people and the lakes of Wisconsin.
All right, with that, I will end the recording here, and so that we can get this up on YouTube in a couple of days. And those that didn't get a chance to attend, see it there.